It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a running back delivered, but you can get baby back ribs delivered. A strong defense? No. A strong deodorant? Yes. A six-pack of abs? Nope. Six-pack of beer? Yes. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol 21 plus and in select cities. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
About every summer, we meet for a trip.
Vacation has officially begun on Netflix.
To best enjoy your trip, we suggest the following itinerary.
I say we just wing it.
Wing it.
See where the wind takes us.
From best-selling author Emily Henry.
Are you guys like a thing?
Oh, no, we're just friends. Platonic travel companions.
Comes your next favorite rom-com.
Who wants to go skinny dipping? Alex does.
Vacation, Alex!
I love it when you get weird.
People we meet on vacation. Now playing on Netflix. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm Aislinn Green, and this is Unpacked by Afar. This week, I'm handing the mic over to Afar's fabulous editor-at-large, Laura Dannon-Redman. For the past several years, Laura has covered one of the most influential rankings released every year, the world's best cities list. Produced by Resonance Consultancy, the list of 100 cities incorporates traditional data like GDP and the number of Fortune 500 corporate headquarters in a city. But it also incorporates research that speaks to the experiential nature of a city, the things that travelers look for, museums, parks, restaurants, etc. And it factors in livability, or the things that make a city great for residents, people who live there full time. So Laura sat down with Chris Fair, president and CEO of Resonance, to talk about how the company has evolved their methodology over the years, the surprises on this year's list, the different reaction that city officials and residents have to their ranking, and of course, the one thing that we all want to know, what are the 10 best cities in the world? You're going to hear them soon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Dannon-Redman. I'm editor-at-large at Afar magazine. And I am here today with Chris Fair, president of Resonance Consultancy. We are here today to discuss the biggest list reveal that we have of the year on afar.com, as well as for Resonance. It's the world's best cities list. Insert applause. So how does this list come about, Chris? Do you mind talking about the special sauce a little?
Sure. I mean, this has been a bit of a journey that we started 11 years ago. We wanted to figure out how do we measure quality of place. Of course, there's many core statistics out there, but there was really nothing that could speak to the experiential quality of place. And that really began our journey of creating these rankings more as a consulting tool in our practice that eventually evolved into something that we publish publicly and have been using it to help educate cities, governments, planners, destination marketers on the role and the value of vibrancy in the city, not just the livability and the economic prosperity, but what we call the lovability of place.
That's what I like the best about this list. It's not just a list of the highest GDP cities in the world. These power place rankings you've created, it's proprietary to Resonance, right? So there's not just lovability. What are the other two?
Yeah, so we look at lovability that speaks to the experiential quality of place, but also the stickiness of it. So we're mining user-generated data in Google, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, looking at how people are interacting with the city, along with nightlife, culture, restaurants, museums, etc. And that's, of course, what we love about places when we travel, is usually the different experiences they offer. But that's just one leg of the stool when we think about how we evaluate a city. The second is around livability. So looking at affordability of housing, healthcare, parks and recreation, air quality. This year we've added in climate resilience. How are these cities being affected by climate change? So there's a whole variety of factors that really reflect what would be important to you when you're thinking about a city as a place to live. And the third leg of the stool in the ranking is around prosperity, which are those kind of key common economic indicators as it relates to GDP per capita, labor force participation, the startup environment for business, but also key infrastructure like the size of a convention center, the connectivity of an airport. Sometimes we think about those as really being assets for tourism, but actually they're even more important to driving the economic prosperity of cities overall.
And I think we should probably find out now, what are those world's best cities? We have a list of 100 that we are clearly not going to sit here and talk about all 100 today, unfortunately. But I think I'll do a little, New Year's Rockin' Eve drum roll and reveal the top 10. And then maybe we can dig into what makes them great. So...
Yeah, so no real surprise that, well, I guess we are not surprised anyway that London continues to be the number one city for the 11th year in the row. It's quite interesting that over this journey of creating these rankings over 11 years, there have been multiple changes and refinements to the methodology, even with all of these changes and modifications as we've improved the methodology. London has continued to come out on top. It's a close race with number 2 is your city, New York. Mm-hmm. So kind of neck and neck there, followed not far behind by Paris at number 3, Tokyo at number 4, Madrid at number 5, Singapore is 6th, Rome 7th, Dubai 8th, Berlin 9th, and Barcelona rounds out the top 10.
That's an amazing list, and it's also a pretty similar list to last year. I believe the only newcomer this year to the top 10 is Dubai. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And as we've done this over the last 11 years, there hasn't been a lot of changes in the top 10. So as you get further down the list, that's where you start to see some more variation as it relates to changes in the methodology. One of the big changes we made this year was not so much changing the factors, but changing the source for some of the data points. We had been using TripAdvisor to benchmark the number of restaurants, nightlife experiences, parks, outdoor recreation in cities around the world. Of course, TripAdvisor is used predominantly by Americans, Canadians, Europeans. So we fully acknowledge that gave our rankings a very Western bias. Mm-hmm. So this year we switched to using Google for many of those data points, Google Maps and Weibo in China. So we now have a slightly different list as you get down into the top 100. Actually, there's probably about 10 U.S. cities that dropped out of the top 100.
Interesting.
And then some new cities in South America, even Cape Town in South Africa, others in Asia that moved into the top 100 or moved up the rankings because of that change in using Google Maps instead of using TripAdvisor to quantify how many experiences there were from one city to the next.
That's great. And then I believe in the last 2 years, you've started working with Ipsos, the market research firm. I was wondering what led to that decision.
Yeah, so our rankings for the first 9 years were really focused on collecting both these user-generated data points and core statistics to understand and benchmark the cities from a performance perspective. What we realized is that's only telling us half of the story. And as we think about understanding the attractiveness of one city or another, that we needed to go out to the public and get their perception of these cities and places. So we partnered with Ipsos and have been running global and regional surveys. For the World's Best Cities report, Ipsos conducts a study in 30 countries, more than 20,000 households, and thinking about it in 3 questions, which is 1, which cities would they most like to visit in the next 12 to 24 months? Which cities would they most like to live in someday? And which cities do they think have the best job opportunities? So again, we're capturing what their perception of the livability, the lovability, and the prosperity of these cities as a companion to all the core data and statistics that we're collecting.
Do you see anything that kind of surprised you about, say, the top 20 this year? You mentioned the role that the U.S. played this year, Asian cities, a more holistic view worldwide. Any one city that you're like, that's curious?
Sao Paulo moved up into 18th, again, through this kind of change in methodology. It was interesting that it ranks number 1 for lovability from a performance perspective. So I think we probably didn't see that, or it was not in the top 5 even when we were using TripAdvisor, but through that switch to Google Maps, we are now getting a much more authentic and a better understanding and appreciation for the volume of great restaurants, nightlife experiences, also the interaction on social media, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, etc. So you do see some surprises like that where, okay, Sao Paulo, from an empirical perspective, based on all the data points that we're collecting to measure lovability, is performing as the most lovable city in the world in terms of the experiential quality. Now, its perception is only 66th in the Ipsos survey. So there's a big gap there, and also an opportunity. If I was in destination marketing or working for the government of Sao Paulo or Brazil, we'd be looking at, okay, we have a great product here that obviously isn't well understood globally. So how are we connecting the dots between and closing that gap between what our rankings say their performance is versus what the global perception of Sao Paulo as a place to visit is?
Interesting. So does that mean that London doesn't have a PR problem? What is it that London's doing really well this year?
Yeah, I think the strength of London is that it does well, across the board. So it performs number one for the prosperity metrics from a data perspective. It's number two for performance when it comes to lovability. It's number five when it comes to livability. And its perception is second or third in all three of those categories. So it's really the strength of having that holistic view that London is a great place to visit. It's a desirable place to live. And it's a strong economic engine as it relates to business and job opportunities. And that's really what propels it to the top. And again, New York is right there with it across the board, but we can kind of see those two cities as being really neck and neck with each other as it relates to which is the world's best city.
Well, I think one big difference there is the slightly weaker pound at the moment, and rent and the cost of living going way up in New York, but seeming to be slightly more affordable in London. I love the report, really digs into multiple elements of what it's like to live there. One real estate agent was saying she had the most U.S. clients looking for homes than she had in decades, I believe. What is London doing to attract more people?
I think there's obviously some migration of talent, from an economic perspective. There's concerns as a result of Brexit that, companies would leave the UK. And I think there is certainly some evidence of that, but it's interesting to see how London as a brand or as an entity really stands apart from the UK overall and seems to be impervious to some of those shifts in policy and politics. We look at London as the capital of capitals, as it were, being one of the most globally connected cities, not just connectivity from an airport perspective, but culturally connected with people from many different cultures, countries, around the world. I do think we'll see in time, there are challenges in the UK from an economic perspective, and we're, start to pick up those early signals. You do hear anecdotal evidence of wealthy Londoners, leaving the city, perhaps moving to Dubai or other more climates that are more tax friendly, not just weather-wise. And that could affect London over time. I don't think it's a guarantee that London will stay at the top of the list indefinitely.
So what are some of the common threads of success among the top 10? I know that sustainability has become a bigger sector to study, and a lot of the major cities that were doing really well had, say, the equivalent of New York City's High Line in development. I saw that come up a couple times. What else connects them all?
It's primarily a lot of the sites and landmarks, nature and parks, transit. Some of them are quite good from a bikeability and walkability perspective, which are two factors we look at. But they're quite different. When you look at, Paris is ranked fourth, tied with London for bikeability. Dubai's 252nd. So I think I kind of characterize each city as a bit like a snowflake. They all have a different, unique pattern to them. And there is strengths and weaknesses within each of them. For example, I can look at Barcelona and say, well, it ranks third for public transit, but air quality is 146th. And that's kind of where you get into the real insights when we work with cities, is helping them understand, well, it's great that you have this overall ranking, but that's an aggregate. When we really break down and look at the individual factors, we can really identify some strengths and weaknesses. I think one of the things that's emerging that we look at, both the climate risk. We partnered with a company out of Singapore, AlphaGeo, to provide their data and incorporate their data rankings. And actually, when you look at a lot of our, top 10 cities, they are some of the ones that are most at risk as it relates to and least prepared for climate change. And I think that's probably one of the things that we'll need to look at, that it isn't yet influencing behavior. But we could see, 10, 20 years from now, this list might look very different as our physical environment changes, and some cities will adapt. Some cities will maybe benefit from that, changing climate, but a lot of other ones will not be prepared, and the quality of life, whether that's as a place to live or as a place to visit or as a place to do business, could be seriously impacted.
That's a really great point. We're not even seeing a ton, like, say, California cities on this list. Do you happen to know where they rank? Given wildfires in LA in the recent years. And
yeah, Los Angeles is just outside of the top 10 at number 12. San Francisco is quite a ways down the list at number 28. If we went back to the beginning when we started these rankings, it was in the top 10. A lot of that is relative to its perception scores. And when you look at the perception of San Francisco, we've seen that it's been, kind of much maligned in the media since the pandemic. There are some serious issues there to deal with, but not as serious as the media tends to make them out to be. And the underlying strengths of San Francisco, particularly from an economic perspective and from an experiential perspective, are still what they were prior to the pandemic. And I'm confident that we'll see over time San Francisco's perception will improve and it will move back up in the rankings.
This episode is brought to you by FX's The Beauty Official Podcast. Join host Evan Ross Katz on the official podcast for FX's hottest new series, The Beauty, taking you behind the scenes with its amazing stars as they discuss the show's most jaw-dropping moments. Featuring Evan Peters, Anthony Ramos, Jeremy Pope, Ashton Kutcher, Rebecca Hall, Bella Hadid, Meghan Trainor, Isabella Rossellini, Jessica Alexander, and Ari Grainer. Search FX's The Beauty wherever you listen to podcasts.
What other U.S. cities are in the top 20? How did we fare this year?
New York is the only one in the top 10, and then you have Los Angeles is at 12th. Then we really don't see another U.S. city appear until Miami at 26th, and then you have San Francisco at 28th, and then Chicago is 35th.
Do you think the attitude towards these U.S. cities has changed in the last year, perception-wise?
I think that's, can be part of it, although it's interesting. We also ask a question about what countries would you most like to visit? And the United States is still number one for Canadians. It's still number one in the UK and in Germany as well. So I don't think, while we do have seen a decline in international visitation to the United States under the current administration, I don't think it has yet tarnished the American brand. And we'll see over time as we do this survey, we'll be tracking that to see, okay, does that perception of the United States in terms of the desirability start to decline? I don't think it will. I think in time we'll see that international recovery come back with perhaps a different change of administrations in the future.
It's always temporary, right? But we are also talking about, a world's best list. It's kind of a popularity contest in a way. And you and I were chatting right before we got on the call about what does it mean to tell people year in and year out to continue to go back to this same small set of places. Barcelona is number 10 on the list, and it's historically been suffering from overtourism, even post-pandemic, that the numbers have gone right back up. 12 million, something like double the greater metropolitan area visits Barcelona every year. So what role do you think a list like this plays in its effect on these cities?
Yeah, well, I think we're both maybe perhaps part of the solution and part of the problem, as it relates to starting this project really as a diagnostic tool to help cities understand what their strengths and weaknesses are in now looking at their performance versus perception. But, the very nature of putting together a ranking and publicizing it, it becomes a bit of a self-reinforcing loop, so to speak, where people will want to go to the best cities. And, the more they're ranked in the best cities and the more that we pick up in the perception, the more people will want to come. So, our challenge here is to hopefully make sure that not everyone comes at the same time. How do we also ensure that these cities and places continue to be accessible to a diverse range of visitors? But I do think that is one of the issues that we're picking up on in our survey, is that we're actually seeing that there are thousands and thousands. There's more than 10,000 cities with a population of 50,000 plus in the world. But when we run this survey with Ipsos, there's only 745 places mentioned, and that amongst the 20,000 households of places they'd like to go. And only 50 of those get 1% or more of the votes. So you have this huge world, many thousands of cities, billions of travelers, but most of them wanting to travel to many of the same places. And that seems to be increasing. Whether that's because of our rankings or others, hard to say, but we have not yet figured out how to kind of crack that code of getting people to want to visit less traveled places. And I think that's probably our biggest challenge as professionals and advisors in this sector is, how do we educate people on all of these cities that we see have a great product but are missing the perception. So that's a marketing gap that we can solve through brand and communications, working with media like yourselves to tell their stories.
We should probably note, too, that the cities on a world's best list all have a population of 1 million or more. Do you still do the best small cities list?
Periodically. So yeah, this year we are doing an America's Best Small Cities list again. So in the US city ranking, the Europe city ranking, we look at cities of 500,000 plus. So we do lower that threshold, and we are planning to do an analysis of all. There's about 370 metro areas in the United States, and we will be collecting data for all of them this year and coming out with a small cities ranking this summer as well.
So I'm curious, is your home city on the list?
Yeah, so I live in Vancouver, and we are on the list at 41st, which many of my fellow friends and colleagues here in Vancouver don't like the rankings. We were often ranked as one of the most livable cities in the world, no longer in the top 5, so that's slipped a little bit. But I think 41st actually for Vancouver is a fair analysis when you look at it holistically. Yes, it's a great place to live. It's a fantastic place to visit. But economically, it's probably underperforming relative to the quality of the place that we have. And there's some challenges and opportunities around that. And that's kind of what we focused on as we think about Vancouver, is thinking about how to develop its economy and raise incomes here in the city, which is another way of making it more affordable. It's not just cheaper housing. It's actually how do we elevate average household incomes.
Mm-hmm. And when you publish a list like this, do you hear from these cities, bigger, smaller? What's an example of some kind of feedback you get?
Yeah, the feedback is mixed. Obviously, if cities like their ranking, they love the methodology. If they don't like their ranking, they take issues with it. And I'm fine with that. I think that what's important is that, that we're hopefully provoking a conversation of understanding, well, what are the metrics? What are the KPIs? How do we measure success? That it shouldn't just be hotel occupancy. It shouldn't just be numbers of visitors. It shouldn't just be GDP. And those quantitative measures tend to be how most professionals, companies, government officials, how their success is measured. And we need to broaden that conversation to say that it's not just about heads and beds. It's not just about the economy. It's also about what is the quality of the experience? What is the quality of life for the people that live in these places? And I think we've been strong advocates for advancing that conversation, at least broadening the conversation beyond those economic KPIs to start to look at some of these experiential and environmental factors that are just as important.
I do really appreciate how much you value culture in these studies, and how a city like Rome, who prosperity-wise might not be doing the best. It is consistently in the top just given its historic assets, right? All the sites and landmarks. And I don't think culture gets that kind of fair shake in a lot of these rankings.
And I think that's, again, because we don't do a good job of tying the value of culture and experience. Like we talk about return on investment all the time. We don't talk about return on experience. And I think increasingly that is emerging as we go back to Richard Florida when he authored The Rise of the Creative Class more than 20 years ago. He was talking about the experiential quality of place, the vibrancy of place being important to attract talent. And, our research and work has continued to validate that. And I think we will see that become even more important. And as we think about the rise of remote work, hybrid work, etc., if you can live anywhere, you want to live somewhere. You don't want to live nowhere. So where are people choosing to live if they have more freedom and flexibility? They are choosing to live in places that are desirable to visit. And we've actually done several correlation analyses looking at the relationship between the desirability and the performance of a city as it relates to its lovability and the size of its prime age population in terms of where people 25 to 45 are looking to live. And there is a very strong relationship there. So that's part of our job of then, educating companies, economic development organizations, city officials to think about culture not just as a nice to have, but actually as a need to have and as a catalyst of economic development.
Was that part of the reason that you started doing this survey, this mapping 11 years ago? What triggered you to, this is a big endeavor. This doesn't, this takes time.
Yes. Well, it actually started with a particular project in 2014 with, we were working with Forcha Ireland, which is the National Tourism Development Authority in Ireland that was looking to attract more visitors to the south and east of the country. And we had to look at and say, well, what do we have in terms of assets? Well, they had a map with over 1,000 things on it in terms of monuments, museums, etc., points of interest, landmarks. And we had to try and dissect to say, well, which of these things really matter as it relates to attracting international visitors? And that's where we first developed the idea of mining user-generated data from TripAdvisor of let's take all of the international reviews for Ireland and map them to see what actually matters. And we were able to take that list from 1,000 down to 50 kind of key points. So that helped us understand, well, this is how visitors, our international visitors in particular, are consuming this particular place. So it started with a problem and then developing a method to answer that question, which then expanded into thinking about, well, what is it that really drives us to choose a place to live, a place to visit? I think a lot of the things, if I asked you today, what's important to you in choosing a place to live, you would probably talk about healthcare, safety, quality of schools, daycare. But the reality is those are more neighborhood level drivers. Those are things you think about once you're already in a city. You're not choosing to move to London or New York because of the quality of the daycares. You're choosing it for a particular reason. And once you've decided on London or you've decided on San Diego or you've decided on Berlin, then you make decisions about what neighborhood you live in based on affordability, safety, education, healthcare, etc., daycare. So I think the part of our work has also been trying to educate people and help them understand, well, what are really the location, the drivers of location decisions at the metropolitan level versus at the neighborhood level. And those can be two very, very different things.
And you have these conversations during the World's Best Symposium that you put together, right?
We do an event called World City, WRLDCTY, no vowels, kind of like an airport code. But we started that off really as a forum to have these conversations of bringing people together from the tourism sector, from city administrations, from economic development. Again, trying to break down the silos, just like we've done in the rankings of taking what I call a 360-degree view of a city by looking at livability, lovability, and prosperity together. We do that same thing within the World City Forum for Urban Innovation, where we're bringing leaders together from tourism, from city government, from economic development to try and have these conversations and realize that we're all trying to achieve the same goal, which is to create cities that are livable, lovable, and prosperous. How do we break down the barriers and do that together?
That's great. So repeating, World City, no vowels, like an airport code. You can find it on the Google machine. I'm going to go through the list one more time so everyone knows. It's at the top. We go London at number 1, New York at number 2, Paris, Tokyo, Madrid, Singapore, Rome, Dubai, Berlin, and Barcelona in the top 10. So congrats to those cities. And Chris, where are you hoping to go that you've never been before? Any of the cities in the top 100?
I've never been to Brazil, so Sao Paulo, when I look at the data, it tells me that there's something going on there. I think it's probably the only city in the top 20 that I haven't been to. So that's pretty high on my list. And then I'm also really interested as we look at down the list here at Warsaw. I've been to Poland, but not been to Warsaw. And I think that maybe it ranks 43rd in the rankings, but it's got some interesting numbers here. 17th for museums, 38th for theaters and concerts. It's got some interesting points that pop up that tell me that there's something going on there that could be an interesting place to visit.
Well, if people want to see the full list, they can start by coming to afar.com. Don't miss our story. And then where should they go to see everything, Chris?
Yeah, it's very simple. You can go to worldsbestcities.com and you'll find the report there. You can read online, the detailed profiles of all 100 cities, or you can download a PDF report if you're old-fashioned and old school like me. And you can also view the reports for our America's Best Cities rankings, our Europe's Best Cities ranking, and our last Asia Pacific Best Cities rankings, which take a more regional view of the cities in those particular parts of the world.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want us to know or you want people listening to know?
The point here is not so much to fixate on what the absolute number of the ranking is. I think any city that's in the top 100 tells us that, this is a special place out of the thousands and thousands of cities around the world, and we should celebrate them not just because of the number they have attached to their ranking, but actually trying to look at them to see what makes them unique or different. And that's what I do love about the rankings, is seeing the diversity. When you look at all of the data points underneath these aggregate rankings, you see, as I said earlier, how every city is like a snowflake. They're all completely unique and different, and that's really the joy of travel, is discovering those unique differences and celebrating them from one place to another.
Let's get people traveling. All right, we're going to let you all go. Chris Fair, thank you so much for your time. It was a really good chat. I'm Laura Redman. Again, we'll see you out there in the world.
Thanks, Laura.
This is Aislinn again with a special thanks to Laura Dannon Redman, Afar's editor-at-large, and Chris Fair, president and CEO of Resonance Consultancy. You'll find all the links I mentioned in the show notes, and we will see you in our next episode. Ready for more unpacking? Visit afar.com and be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We're at Afar Media. If you enjoyed today's exploration, I hope you'll come back for more great stories. Subscribing always makes that easy, and be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast platforms. It helps other travelers find it. And if you want to ask a question or suggest a topic for coverage, you can leave us a voicemail at the link in the show notes, or email us at unpackedataFar.com. This has been Unpacked, a production of Afar Media. The podcast is produced by Aislinn Green and Nikki Galteland. Music composition by Chris Cullen. And remember, the travel world is complicated. We're here to help you unpack it.